Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. I'm Robert Perea, in for the vacationing Sam Shad. On the program today, I have Zip Upham, the Public Information Officer for Naval Air Station Fallon, on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Calamity. It lurks around every corner. Or not. That's why UMC Quick Care is around every corner, with locations around the valley. UMC Quick Care, for all your small calamities.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years. Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
What do you count on? You count on your power every day. At NV Energy, we've always powered what's important to you, but we're not looking at the past. We're focused on the future. While our standards are high, our rates will remain low. And our commitment to renewables isn't just meeting standards, but leading the way. Because you can count on more than just your power. You can count on the company who brings it to you. That's our promise. You can count on it.
Calamity. It lurks around every corner. Or not. That's why UMC Quick Care is around every corner, with locations around the valley. UMC Quick Care, for all your small calamities.
Nevada Newsmakers Studio is located at the headquarters of the Nevada Trucking Association. Motion and purpose are a truck's greatest virtue.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
Welcome back to Nevada Newsmakers. I'm Robert Perea, filling in for the vacationing Sam Shad. And today on the program, I'm visiting with the Public Information Officer of the Fallon Naval Air Station, Zip Upham. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Robert.
So, when everybody thinks of the Naval Air Station Fallon, the first thing that pops in their mind is Top Gun, and everybody's impression of that is from the movie. So, what is Top Gun really like? How does it compare?
So the Navy has had Top Gun as a thing in the public conscious since the movie came out in the 80s. Paramount is supposed to be putting Top Gun Maverick, the sequel, out on the street on the 27th of May. And I will tell you this, it's a little bit different in real life, and Hollywood does not care about geography. Top Gun has been in Fallon since 1996. The school formed in Miramar, California, back in 1969. And since the school formed, what that school has done for the Navy is take a small group of pilots and aircrew and train them to be weapons and tactics instructors, the guru of how to fight and fly that particular aircraft. And so Top Gun is focused on first the fighter role, and now it's the strike fighter role. So it's both air-to-air and air-to-ground. So we still do that. We still take a small group of students, we run them through a 15-week class, and they become weapons and tactics instructors. The Navy has used that format since 1969, and it has served us very, very well. So well, in fact, that now we have Top Gun-styled programs for all of our tactical platforms. So our electronic jamming aircraft, the EA-18G Growlers, now have a class designed like Top Gun called Havoc. We have a program for our helicopter aircrew called Seawolf that also generates weapons and tactics instructors. And then Top Dome does the same thing for our command and control platforms, our radar aircraft, the E-2C and E-2D Hawkeyes. And so those programs are all in Fallon. They're all under the Naval Aviation Warfighting Development Center, which I refer to as the schoolhouse because the acronym NAUTIC is a little painful. But the training center in Fallon has been imperative to naval aviation readiness and training since actually the 50s. And Top Gun moving there in 1996 just gave it a little bit of public awareness, but we've been doing the same thing for the last 70 years or so. So that being said, it's imperative to the Navy that training, the preparation that we do for those air crews and the aircraft that are going to deploy on the carriers, that we do that in Fallon and that we get that right so that they can be ready to go into combat wherever those carriers deploy on the globe.
Fallon is the only place?
Fallon is the only place that carrier air wings actually train to that level and get ready for their upcoming deployments.
It's kind of fascinating to think you're training to land and take off from ships in the ocean, and you're doing it in the desert.
Yeah, we tell everybody we have a secret submarine, but we can't talk about it. The one irony is that the one thing we don't do in Fallon is train to land on a ship. An aircraft carrier has a 400-foot landing area. It is a very dangerous place to operate, and in Fallon we have 14,000 feet of runway, and it's not the same thing. And while we want our air crews to be very good at landing on a ship, Fallon is at 4,000 feet in elevation, and so it ends up being negative training if we teach the pilots to land on the ship there.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing we don't do.
So I always
All of the rest
wondered
of it-
why you couldn't just simulate a ship out in the middle of the desert, so the elevation would be
You
obviously
could do that, and we do at all of our lower airfields, the naval air stations that are closer to sea level, so that our air crews do get that training. But at 4,000 feet, the density altitude changes, and the aircraft behaves differently than it does at sea level. And so that is one of the only things we don't train to. Everything else, every other aspect of combat, we can put the air crew through their steps.
That's really fascinating. What kind of other training do you guys have at Fallon that are unique to Fallon?
So the vast majority of our focus is on those aircraft that are going to deploy on aircraft carriers. The other aspect of training at Fallon that's current right now, we have ground mobility training for our Navy SEALs, where we teach them how to operate vehicles and operate weapon system from those vehicles so that they have the ability to use those weapons from moving vehicles while they're potentially engaged by the enemy. And all of the Navy SEALs, before they go downrange, come to Fallon for that ground mobility training.
This is I think it was recently, the operational support center was moved from Reno to Fallon. What is that, and why was that done?
So there's an entire cadre of Navy reservists that used to drill instead at the Naval Operational Support Center there, and we call it a NOSC. It is where all the Navy reservists go to perform their drill activity before they go to their gaining commands. And we moved that NOSC, built a brand new structure in Fallon, moved the NOSC out to Fallon, and it's been operational for most of the last year. And now all of the Northern Nevada Navy reservists are drilling in Fallon. And so we have the opportunity to support them with all of the base amenities and have a little bit more backstop for the reservists. But that drill center now is the NOSC in Fallon. It's a brand new facility. It's pretty state of the art.
You have a new simulator building also?
So the Naval Aviation Warfighting Development Center, NAUTIC, has continued to expand its campus because of some of the additional training they're taking on. And one of the things they're looking at closely is doing additional training in the virtual environment. And what they're going to fold in is what they call the virtual construct, which will allow them to have pilots and simulators folded into actual real-life missions as they're training out on our training range. And so they built an entire facility just for those simulators so they can figure out how to fold those together and potentially do some of the training without having to fly the actual jets, which is, of course, burns a lot of fuel, costs a lot of money, a lot of maintenance, etc. There is one thing, however, we cannot do completely in a simulated environment, and that's end-to-end weapons testing. We can't drop live munitions and simulate that on a computer system and then go and perform it in combat and have everything work the way it's supposed to. We have to be able to train the same way we're going to fight. And so in combat, we need to be able to say, hey, I've practiced this in Fallon. I know exactly how these weapons are employed, and I know how to actually get this bomb on its target.
So the range that the pilots are training on, you're actually dropping bombs in the desert?
Absolutely. So there are 4 impact areas outside of the town of Fallon, in all of them in Churchill County, and those 4 impact areas are where 80% of the weapons that the Navy trains with on aircraft land. There are a little bit of places where they can do some other training out over the ocean down in El Centro, California, but for the most part, the vast preponderance of Navy ordnance training from aircraft is done in Fallon.
So are these live rounds, or are they the missile equivalent of a blank, or?
Both.
Both.
We have the ability to fly with captive carry munitions, where we don't drop the munitions, but you've got training because you're actually seeing what the seeker head on the weapon would see and how the weapon would function, but you're not going to release it. We have the ability to train with inert ordnance, where the weapon is not going to detonate, and most of them are filled with concrete, but it has the same shape, it has the same ballistics, and it has the same guidance system that the real weapon has. And then we have the ability to train with up to 2,000-pound bombs in live munitions that are going to come off the aircraft, guide to their target, and go high order and detonate.
Well, I'm curious about that because the elevation, you talked about how that affects training as far as landing and taking off, say, from a ship in the ocean. Does the elevation affect the trajectory of a guided missile, or is that affected at all?
Slightly, but it can be calculated and taken into account. One of the advantages we had, particularly at the beginning of Operation Enduring Freedom, was the Fallon Ranges actually simulate high altitude Afghanistan very, very well. Not a lot of trees, awful lot of rugged terrain, but that high altitude actually did come into play when we were operating in Afghanistan. So that simulation, or that coincidence, works very well for the Navy's training.
All right, so we'll take a break and we'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers.
7 at 7 is available anytime, anywhere.
I'm Riley Smith with your Vegas Golden Knights. Watch 7 minutes of nonstop news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Streaming on LVRJ.com and Twitter. Powered by the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Modern boutique Ahern Hotel and Events Center in Las Vegas. Host meetings and events on 2 floors. Stay in luxurious rooms and suites. Unlimited branding opportunities. Regional Italian cuisine by Chef Mark Segrisi. Flexible event spaces. Full buyout options. Visit ahernhotel.com today.
I'm Jeff Gehrman, an investigative reporter with the Las Vegas Review-Journal. I'm your guide for Season 2 of Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas.
You're in with every gangster and hoodlum in the United States. I don't go for that, Mr. Kennedy. I don't go for that kind of action.
I was on television accused of fronting for the mob.
Subscribe to Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas, Season 2, today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Before the masks, before the distancing, before the world changed, UMC was ready. Our response to COVID-19 began before the crisis did, with our own team of infectious disease experts who've spent their careers planning for this moment. With a pandemic response plan, we'd practiced again and again, and by blazing new trails in large-scale testing, including every patient we admit. Always ready. UMC.
7 at 7 is available anytime, anywhere.
I'm Riley Smith with your Vegas Golden Knights. Watch 7 minutes of nonstop news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Streaming on LVRJ.com and YouTube. Powered by the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
Welcome back to Nevada Newsmakers. I'm Robert Perea, filling in for the vacationing Sam Shad. And I'm visiting with Zip Upham. He's the Public Information Officer at Fallon Naval Air Station. And right before the break, we mentioned a little bit about the training ground outside. What is that area actually called?
So we call it the FRTC, which stands for the Fallon Range Training Complex, and it includes 13,000 square miles of northern Nevada sky. the airspace that we have to operate in. It also includes those 4 bombing ranges that I mentioned. Those impact areas are critical to the Navy, and the Navy is very focused on making sure that that training can continue. At this point, though, we haven't modified or changed those impact areas since about 1995. And because of that, we took a very close look at what we needed going into the future and did a study back in 2015 and figured out how we need to modernize the FRTC. And so we have an effort underway now to try to modify and expand the ranges that we have. To be clear, we're not trying to increase the area that we're going to be dropping bombs on. However, what we looked at was the modern weapons that we have and the safety buffer that we need around those impact areas that will allow us to employ those weapons in a realistic manner. Because of that, the Navy now has a concern about how much risk the public is if they're in the vicinity of those weapons, not so much when the weapon goes exactly where it's supposed to, but what happens if something goes wrong with the weapons delivery, either a failure in the weapon or a misdirection by the pilot trying to deliver it. And what we're looking at doing is expanding the FRTC ground terrain that is controlled by the Navy that will allow us safety buffers around those impact areas to give us a more broad safety cushion and to keep the public away from what possibly, in a very small likelihood, could be an errant aerial weapon.
Now, I know there was no appropriations in the National Defense Act this year to expand that. So does that mean the end of that, or where do you go now trying to achieve that?
It absolutely doesn't. The Navy is very committed to the requirements that we've mapped out and the way forward in order to meet those requirements for our training. We are working with our congressional delegations, both here in the state and back in Washington, D.C., with Congress as a whole, in order to try to get the legislation that will allow us to expand those ranges so that we have the ability to keep the public safe. But we haven't stopped that effort. We understand it's going to take a little while, and then once we get the legislation in place, it's still going to take a little time for the Navy to actually modify the ranges as we need to so that we can do the weapons training that is imperative to our military readiness. Mm-hmm. And I would tell you, that weapons training is predicated on what we had in the arsenal available in 2015. Now we have Joint Strike Fighter, the new stealth jet, the first stealth jet that the Navy has operated, and some of these envelopes and standoff distances and capabilities of both the weapons and the aircraft are probably going to be bigger in the future. But for now, we realistically need the additional training space in order to maintain that safety buffer mm-hmm. and keep the public safe while we train. What are some of the things that you have to do? I know there's kind of some concern from different groups that some of the land might be tribal land or historical tribal land, and some other issues like that. What are some of those things that you guys have to accomplish and kind of work together? So we've been through a very elaborate environmental impacts study that looked at what is going to be impacted, and we are working with all of our stakeholders. That includes the local Native American tribes, county and city governments here in northern Nevada, as well as the state of Nevada, and other off-road groups and other users of the range space, because we want to be able to mitigate and coordinate with all of the folks that would be impacted by what we're trying to do with the range modernization. So how long has NAS Fallon been in Fallon? So we've been there since 1942. Uh-huh. There was a brief time in the late 40s where we weren't a naval base, but since 1950 we have been a naval installation, and our training has continued to train carrier air wings here in the northern Nevada desert ever since, and we expect that to continue into the future. All right. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers.
Dimitri Prine here for Design Outdoor. At Design Outdoor, we specialize in all hardscapes, pavers, and walls you'll need for everything, from wonderful small yards to full-blown outdoor living. And we only refer the best contractors to make your vision a reality. Our store and backyard are located at 11600 South Virginia, just north of DeMonte Ranch Parkway. Visit designoutdoor.com or call us at 851-9499.
I'm men's rights attorney Marilyn York, and because I represent men in all family law matters, women often call me gender traitor, woman hater, and even disgusting. So why represent men and target myself with these offensive monikers? It's simple. Children with fathers in their lives are 6 times less likely to drop out of school, 15 times less likely to go to prison, and 5 times less likely to commit suicide. So ladies, you can hate me, but please love your children more than you hate their fathers.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
Welcome back to Nevada Newsmakers. I'm Robert Perea, filling in for the vacationing Sam Shad, and I'm talking with Zip Upham from Naval Air Station Fallon. And went off talking a little bit about the range, but you have a new commanding officer coming aboard soon.
We do. My boss, Captain Evan Morrison, is stepping down after an entire career in the Navy and will be retiring in mid-March. And coming on board is Captain Shane Tanner. He will be the new commanding officer of Naval Air Station Fallon, and we're looking forward to welcoming the new skipper.
He starts, you said, in March. Big ceremony planned for...
Always.
Yeah.
Change of command takes an awful lot of pomp and circumstance, and so we will have a change of command ceremony on the 18th.
Yeah. What's the numbers that, how many people are stationed there now?
So to give you an idea, approximately 1,000 military members work at NAS Fallon on a day-to-day basis, and then about 2,000 folks, either civilian contractors or government civil servants, also work on the base. So our workforce is approximately 3,000 people. But then when we have an air wing that visits for training, that number jumps up because they bring 1,800 to 2,000 people with them. So our temporary population tends to come and go, but when we have an air wing in training in Fallon, it's an awful lot of folks. Because of that, we run one of the largest hotels in northern Nevada, just for those transient personnel. And we do a full air wing detachment 4 to 5 times a year. So those month-long courses tend to be on again, off again, but it makes a big impact economically in the local community.
Where do those people live? I know you have a certain amount of base housing, and then we visited with the Churchill County manager, and he mentioned having a shortage of housing.
Right.
Where is everybody going?
So the transient folks all live in the billeting on base, unless we run out of room, which is on occasion sometimes an issue, and we push them into hotels out in town. But for our population that is stationed in Fallon, when they get orders to the Naval Air Station, they're looking to either move on to base housing, where we have homes we just renovated, over 300 of them, or out into town. The problem we have is, based on our current loading, we probably need almost 200 additional homes for families moving into base housing, and we don't have them, and it's going to take a little while to build them. So those families end up being on the economy, competing with the local market for rentals or houses to purchase. And when the county manager is concerned about housing and the availability and how that's going to impact the Navy, that is also a significant concern from the Navy's perspective, because right now the market is just very tight based on the demand and the limited availability.
Obviously, in the civilian sector, housing is developed. Private developers could develop the property, build the houses, sell the houses. How does it work on base?
The base is actually a public-private venture, and so we have Liberty Military Housing that runs base housing. Like I said, we just had the opportunity to either build new houses or renovate existing houses with all of our homes in base housing. And so those are brand new. Everybody likes living there. We just don't have enough of them. So if you can get on the waiting list and get into base housing, that works very well. If you can't get into base housing, you are now looking for a house in Fallon, or some folks end up living in Fernley or even further afield. There's not a lot out to the east of us, but some folks actually commute from Reno Sparks or Carson City, depending on where they find a place to live.
In a perfect world, would everybody live on base?
Ideally, everybody would have a 10-minute commute and just drive from Fallon. Or right across from the gate, they would be 5 minutes from work. But that being said, a lot of people don't want to live in base housing. They would like to live out in town. And the city of Fallon is a wonderful place to live. Most all of the military members that get orders to Fallon come out not knowing why the Navy's out in the desert. And it's a little bit of a shock, especially for some of the family members. But that being said, most everyone reports that it's one of their best tours, and they really enjoy the small town feel and the sense of community in Fallon and Churchill County.
How is the relationship between the Navy and the city of Fallon and the county, Churchill County?
Fortunately, it's very good. We like working with the city. We enjoy the opportunity to work with the county. The county pays attention to what the Navy's concerns and requirements are, and so that relationship has served us very well, and we look forward to continuing that into the future.
All right, well, appreciate you being on the show today, and look forward to speaking to you again.
Thanks, Robert.
All right, this is Zip Upham, the Public Information Officer for the Fallon Naval Air Station. I'm Robert Perea, filling in for Sam Shad while he's on vacation on Nevada Newsmakers. Thank you for watching.
Brian Culpa Photography was born in the rolling hills of Massachusetts, and now he can help you experience the stunning beauty of Nevada in a whole new way through the power of flight. Flying has always been a passion for Brian, and at Brian Culpa Photography, he can make your imagination soar. Brian has the creative mind and tools to tell your unique story. Experience the bird's eye view at brianculpaphotography.com.
Hi, my name's Marilyn Miner, and I'm sure you'd agree that Nevada's a very special place to live. I was born here, and my husband and I have raised our family here. I feel it's a privilege to live and work in the Truckee Meadows. I especially enjoy helping my clients reach their real estate goals. Sometimes the smallest details provide the greatest satisfaction. I'd be complimented to talk to you about your next move.
Call Marilyn Miner at Dixon Realty, 742-1280, or log on to marilynminer.com.
Safety. We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions, and all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
Pro Group Management is the place where companies can find workers' comp solutions that are designed to meet their specific business requirements. As regulations evolve, Pro Group takes a proactive approach to clear the path to make sure your business stays ahead of the curve. Knowing your workers' comp program is optimized, you can focus on other important matters related to your growing business. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Thanks for watching Nevada Newsmakers. I'm Robert Perea in for Sam Shad. You can check out Nevada Newsmakers 24 hours a day at nevadanewsmakers.com. We'll see you on the next show.